First, a brief look at something you can come back to. Hi, I'm Ted Nelson, bringing closure to computers for cynics. Today's final encounter, pay attention to the man behind the curtain. Everyone takes the structure of the computer world as God-given. In a field reputedly so innovative and new, the computer world is really a dumbed-down and imitation of the past, based on ancient traditions and modern oversimplifications that people mistake for the computer itself. In these talks, I have tried, honestly though hastily, to reveal the computer world as a fighting jungle of conflicting agendas, and the debris they have left, a debris created by many individuals, a few of whom I've named. Most of these people are pretty decent guys, but fixated on replicating the past, Aristotelian hierarchies, paper and font, hyper-documents with one-way jumps at most. From the start, they dumbed down the structure of the world to hierarchical directories, highly inappropriate for much of human life, but that wasn't an issue that they noticed at the time. At Xerox PARC, they dumbed the computer down to standard secretarial functions, losing the structure and connection that Doug Engelbart had created, locking users in application prisons and taking away the right to program. At Xerox PARC, they also laid on us crude sequential documents intended for paper printout with abominable editing mechanisms miscalled cut and paste. Those document structures and working methods, the same in almost every system and word processor, were created by, among others, Chuck Simone, Larry Tesler, John Warnock. They meant well. Now, Chuck Simone and Bill Gates have gotten so much money and praise for Microsoft Word, and John Warnock has gotten so much money and praise for a PDF, that it would never occur to them to deviate from their paper model. Same for the web enthusiasts, too tied up with their grand graphics and cutesy effects to see the sterility of one-way jumps. Just as Xerox PARC trivialized and dumbed down the computer and electronic documents, the World Wide Web trivialized and dumbed down the potential connections of electronic literature. Tim Berners-Lee created the page format, a variant of the PARC document format, adding one-way jumps. Tim also created the addressing scheme, URL, port assignment, etc., but it was put in a frame, a PUI, by Mark Andreessen, resulting in the web browser, which built a puppet theater around Tim's simple HTML. And the interior of that web browser has in turn gotten overloaded with special effects and complications, stressing appearances and special case effects, but still having only the one-way jumps from the 1967 dumbed down of hypertext at Brown University. In repudiating this, I stand with my two greatest computer heroes. Douglas Engelbart, my greatest hero, the father of word processing, repudiates word processing because it diverges from the great vision he maintains. It threw away structure and collaboration. Richard Stallman, another great hero of mine, the father of Linux and open source, repudiates open source because it diverges from the vision he maintains. Correspondingly, I, whom some call the father of computer hypertext, disown my bastard child, the World Wide Web, because it diverges from the hypertext vision I maintain. Deep documents with principled reuse, side-by-side intercomparison, and much more that flows from our very different model of electronic literature. I made two mistakes that brought about the World Wide Web, working on that godforsaken HES system at Brown University, which dumbed down hypertext, and acting hastily to relieve Roger Gregory of command in 1988. This is a heavy burden, but I have to keep going. Now, people don't like it when you believe something different. This is called paradigm clash or sectarianism, or among other things. Some people didn't like to hear Xanadu guys talking about some other kind of hypertext or about our alternative, the one-way web. And some people knew how close Xanadu had come to being the world's hypertext system, and they wanted to wipe out that memory. So we were attacked by the straight world of web faddists, by that digital fashion magazine, Wired. In 1995, the foulest journalist of our time was hired by Wired, apparently with instructions to finish us off. He wrote what was supposedly a history of the Xanadu project without describing in any way what we were building. Did he mention flying text, parallel pages, visible connection, detailed side-by-side intercomparison, Unbreakable links. Did he mention its special features for collaboration, workflow, content management, version management, branching versions, remix and mashup, fine-grained tagging, and what are now called wikis? He did not. None of the above. His 20,000 words, supposedly about the Xanadu project, consisted almost entirely of personal slurs and insults. But most of all, he took pains to imply repeatedly that our work grew out of ignorance. Ignorance! Combining what I consider the greatest possible insult with what I consider the greatest possible lie. But it was what people wanted to hear. It told the computer scientists and the internet faddists alike that they could ignore our eccentric challenge to the conventional world of documents and literature and publishing, that they could ignore our radical technicalities. This foul attack by a foul individual left us without resources or respect, so the project entered a nuclear winter from which we are only now emerging. Like Stubblefield, who invented broadcasting, I know what it is to be eaten by rats. I ask rhetorically, is there anything lower than a dishonest journalist? But Roger and I have pressed on, each in a separate prototype hell. We've gone on independently, somehow staying friends, he working on the advanced server, I working on graphics and interfaces, and I having to dumb it down to more rustic internals based on conventional file structures. People have not understood and have not wanted to understand. All those years I wrote and lectured about the Xanadu project, people apparently only heard the first few sentences and misunderstood in so many different ways. A lot of people misunderstood, thinking we had to have mainframes for worldwide hypertext. I said it could be done on a network of little-ish computers, which of course the web proved. A lot of people misunderstood. They thought we were claiming we would have Earth satellites. Calvin Moores and Claude Kagan misunderstood. They thought I was talking about the track language, which they were working on. Tom DeFonte misunderstood. He thought it was his GRASS graphical interpreter. Dave Weiner misunderstood. He showed me his outliner and said, this is the first Xanadu system. I was furious. It was hierarchical. Tim Berners-Lee misunderstood. What Tim says about me in his book, Weaving the Web, is very friendly, but almost every word about my work is technically incorrect. Bill Gates misunderstood. This is pretty funny. I think it was told to me by Linda Stone when she was vice president of Microsoft. When Bill Gates saw Mosaic, the web browser, the first web browser in 1993, he said to his team, quote, "It seems Ted Nelson was right about everything," unquote. I wish I had that in writing. But it shows how completely he misunderstood, since Mosaic, the web browser, was diametrically the opposite of what we were doing. If Tim and Bill couldn't understand our concept, and they're very smart guys, Tim has a first in physics from Oxford, for God's sake, it's not because the idea is complicated, but because our design reverses several paradigms. Here's the concept again. Warning, brief technicalities. In Xanadu structure, content is permanized. The text itself is permanently published and given unchanging addresses. Every character of every new sentence you type gets a permanent address, private or public, your choice. Same applies to audio and video and their frames. A Xanadoc is an arrangement of stabilized content that keeps its original identity and addresses. You change the Xanadoc by a rearrangement and new content, but the content addresses never change even as the pieces move around. Thus, the original context of every quote is always available by following that address back to its origin. Xanalinks, no relation to web links, are not embedded but applied to the content level. This is often called standoff markup. But we apply it to the stabilized content, thus links never break. So a Xanadoc is maintained as a list of content and a list of overlays. We have another form of connection besides Xanalinks. Transclusion is the same content knowably and visibly in two places, recognized as the same by its stabilized addressing. That's how we connect a quotation to its source. I've written a lot about the benefits of the system, but Tim and Bill and most of the world never read any of it, so it has to be explained over and over. Ding! End of technicalities. For me, this is not technology. It is literature. It is the future of human work and the human heritage. It's a matter of life and death. I believe the future of civilization depends on getting decent, serious electronic documents, unlike PDFs and e-books. Now, after I say goodbye, look at the beginning of this video again. That's our latest pretty prototype, the Xanadu space. Every quotation connected to its original context, deep connections between parts of different pages, explorable in detail. Don't be fooled by the rectangularity. That's only one mode of presentation. Conventional electronic documents, Word, PDF, and the web have only one way of showing, and they don't want you to understand the structure. That's called WYSIWYG. Well, we want you to understand the structure, and we want to offer you many ways of seeing it. That's called WYSIWYNK. What you see is what you never could before. In the firmament of formats, we expect that ours will eventually be the one for the smartest people. Not only do I still want to give mankind a decent document system, but personally I hope I live long enough to write and publish the true electronic documents I planned for so long, for which no presentational software or editing mechanism yet exists. And obvious, still obvious, alas, to only a few. In closing, I want to thank my tireless collaborator Andrew Pam, and especially my sweet partner Marlene Malikote for their brave, unending support. I want to thank the Internet Archive for companionship, resources, and a place to shoot, and I want to thank you for listening, now, in the past, and in the future. And speaking of the future, you better check the time. It's just starting now.